mediocre cover band guitar guy, and it's a cold Saturday in June. So today I'm going to talk about something that kind of coincides with what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, because we've done a load-in, sound check, stage banter, what you should bring to your gig, like in terms of being minimalist. Now we're going to talk about the old gig bag. And there are a few things that you should bring to a gig with you in your gig bag backpack. Gig bag's a fancy way of saying like a backpack or a duffel bag or something, or a Sobeys bag, doesn't matter, depends how much crap you're bringing with you. So for me, my gig bag, I usually like to keep some spare batteries. I use a wireless system, and I like to have a fresh set in the wireless transmitter and a fresh set next to my pedal board in case I need it. So in case something happens with the pedal board, or not necessarily the pedal board, but the wireless system, I like to keep a spare cable right next to it as well, sort of tucked under my pedal board, so I can plug right into a cable. If I'm doing a gig where I'm not using my wireless system because there are issues with the wireless, maybe Wi-Fi issue, or I'm getting a cab driver at a local country station through my amp, then I'll have an extra cable for my cable that I'm using. And it's a good idea to have that as well, because you might need to run one from your pedal board to your amp as well. That could give out. I always carry an extra power adapter in case the adapter to my pedal board doesn't work. And if you're using the brick and you've got the separate cables going from the brick to the power reach pedal, sometimes they give out. If you don't have extras, throw a couple of 9 volts batteries, the square ones, in your bag. Don't take them out of your fire alarms, because your missus will get mad at you, trust me. Take a few of those. If you lose the power through your cables, at least then you can power them up with batteries. Make sure they're new batteries though. Sometimes if your pedal board goes down, you might have to just pluck your essentials. For me, I'd have to take my MX ROD and my carbon copy and try to run and my tuner. So I'd have typically three batteries with me. That way then you don't have to have any problems with your gig and stop playing and not be able to play, or just play through an amp or whatever. I also carry a DI box, and reason being, more than a few years ago now, a long time ago, I had a really crappy DI box. It was beat up, I bought it secondhand, but what happened is my pedal board, or not my pedal board, sorry, my amp went down, and I had a Pro 185 Fender, and anyway, it was making all kinds of weird noises, and there was no guitar volume whatsoever. So I ran my pedal board straight through the DI box into the board. The sound person used some reverb from the board and a little bit of delay. We got through the gig. It didn't sound too bad. It didn't sound great, but we got through it and made it through the night. Another thing you can throw in, you should take your own microphones. I got a vocal mic and I got my own SM57. Reason being is that some venues don't provide gear for you, and if you're bringing those things, at least you got them. Or if they're microphones, they only have a couple, at least you got your own. I also have one of these things that attaches my amp for the microphone, and the reason is if you're on a small stage, you can't use a regular mic stand to put the mic in and then mic your amp. So mine actually clips. It's an amp clip. It clips onto my amp, and I get to save a lot of space. Plus, you have always got something to mic your amp with, because I did have a situation one time where they didn't have any mic stands at the venue, and I had to drape an SM57 across the front of my amp, and it didn't capture a good sound at all. So bring your own mics, a mic clip, a little toolkit. I got one. It's one of these here that was given to me for my birthday a couple of years ago. I like it because it has a little screwdriver, because you never know when you'll need one, and it takes multiple attachments, including something similar to a socket set, because it's cool. I've had it happen on my other Gretsch where the input jack came out, couldn't get it through, and didn't have anything to tighten it up properly with. A set of wire snips to cut your strings, trusty string winder, and I got one of these things a long time ago. Put it on the table, stick the neck of your guitar in it, and change your strings easily. Which leads me to always, even though you've got a backup guitar, during break, change your strings, whatever you broke. Very important. If you're playing out of town, you're going to want a few packs of those, because you could get in somewhere where they don't have a music store stocked full of the things that you would use. And if you're like me, you're picky on strings. I've been using Ernie balls for a while. One of these things. Put it on your mic stand, hold a bunch of picks. I drop picks all the time. So that comes in real handy. Just make sure you got a lot of picks with you, especially if you're playing somewhere out of town once again. Acoustic guys know what I'm talking about. Need a couple of these. This will go right back into my guitar case when I'm done this. Or actually this one will, because this used to be my dad's, and this is my backup now. I keep it in the case so it doesn't come out and get lost, because I've left a couple of these hooked onto mic stands belonging to a venue. This is my main one, not that it matters. So I try to bring a couple of those. An extra guitar strap doesn't hurt either, because sometimes you forget one or something happens and you might break one. Band-aids, another thing you should have in your gig bag in case you cut your finger, cut something. You don't want to be bleeding all over the place. The venue doesn't always provide them. I'm sure they got a first aid kit somewhere, but the less you have to ask people for, the better their experience dealing with you is. So I always try to keep band-aids around. Candy is another thing for drying out, your throat's dried out. You can use that to keep the saliva going. So that's important for singers as well. Snacks, if you're playing festivals sometimes, or bars that don't have food at all, like even potato chips or anything, you can carry some granola bars or whatever. If you're healthy snacks, some water. If you're playing a festival, the concession stands, the food trucks and everything, usually they're lined off. So bringing something with you to eat and snack on, or something between sets if you're doing a full night, is a wise idea. Water is another thing. Have that accessible, because it can't be all beer, especially if you're playing on a really hot day. You don't want to dehydrate yourself. If you're playing in the wintertime, or you're playing somewhere where it's got a muddy parking lot and you got to go inside, pair of spare shoes is very important, because you don't want to get water all over your pedals, and you want to get mud all over the stage, because that becomes a bit of a hazard, like a safety issue with slip and falls. Obviously there's a lot of electrical stuff going on stage, outlets. Some of them are built right into the stage. I've seen that. Stepping on your pedal board and getting water everywhere. You don't want to get electrocuted. You don't want anybody to slip and fall, and you don't want to leave the stage muddy, because somebody's got to clean that up, and if it's not going to be you, and somebody at the bar is, and they're not going to like you much. So a pair of spare shoes is always a great thing to have. And a power cable for your amp. I ran into that too, where I got to a gig plugged in. There was no power to my amp. I thought my amp was gone. We had a spare one kicking around, luckily, because it was an inadvertent thing for me to have it there. I didn't pack it up purposely, but we had it there, and it came in handy, and I was very lucky to have it there. So that's another thing that you should keep in your gig bag. Most things, it's a backpack for most guys. And I think that should probably cover it. You're gonna have your guitars anyway. So if you got those handful of things, you should be fine. But you don't want to be caught unawares and have to stop playing during your gig, or not be able to finish your show, or especially if you're playing with other bands, have them come on early and steal your spotlight. You always need to be prepared and diligent in everything you do, and professional. That's an important word, because when you're hired to play, they're giving you money and it's a bit of fun, but you're still getting paid, so you're part of something. So that should be about it, guys, and hopefully tomorrow everybody who's got some, all them dudes going around with some kids that you know about or whatever, you guys will have a good Father's Day. Anyway, guys, have a great weekend. Stay safe.